Welcome to Salem Witch Trials Daily. I'm Josh Hutchinson.
This is Sarah Jack.
May 16th, 1692 was another action-packed day in the Salem witchcraft crisis. The new Massachusetts government, led by Governor William Phips, officially took office. Due to his new gubernatorial powers, Phips also became commander-in-chief of all New England militias, as well as vice admiral of New England's small navy. And William Stoughton became lieutenant governor.
Specters of John Willard and Sarah Buckley purportedly killed Daniel Wilkins. Mercy Lewis and Mary Walcott witnessed the alleged murders.
Mercy testified on May 18th that this evening she was at Henry Wilkins' house visiting the afflicted Daniel Wilkins when she saw the apparition of John Willard choking Daniel.
Mary Walcott also claimed to see the apparition of John Willard choking Daniel Wilkins at the Wilkins house.
Tonight, Daniel Wilkins passed away. His death was blamed on John Willard primarily, and today John Willard was arrested some 40 miles west. A week after his first warrant was issued for his arrest, John was working a field on some land he owned in Lancaster when he was apprehended. And according to Susannah Sheldon's May 17th deposition, George Jacobs Jr. and his wife Rebecca appeared to her today and wanted her to sign the Devil's Book. When Sheldon said she would not, Rebecca said she would stab her. Then Susannah received a sore wound on her left side. Then Elizabeth Colson stabbed her in the back, right against the other wounds, so that she spent blood. Next, Elizabeth Procter appeared and afflicted Susannah while tempting her to sign the book.
Ann Putnam testified that on May 8, 1692, there appeared to me the apparition of an old gray-headed man with a great nose, which tortured me and almost choked me and urged me to write in his book.
She continued, I asked him what was his name and from whence he came, for I would complain of him. And he told me he came from Lynn, and people used to call him old Father Pharaoh. And he said he was my grandfather, for my father used to call him father. But I told I would not call him grandfather, for he was a wizard, and I would complain of him. And when Anne's talking here about this old Father Pharaoh, she's talking about a man in Lynn that has not been identified just yet, but is known as old Father Pharaoh. And so her father, Thomas Putnam, would have called him Father Pharaoh. And that's how come they're saying that Anne is like his granddaughter, because her father called him father, even though he's not related at all.
Thomas Putnam and Robert Morey supported Anne's claims. They had witnessed her struggle and heard her cry out, I will not write, old Pharaoh. I will not write in your book.
And Ann Putnam Jr. also testified against Elizabeth Hart, claiming that she often saw Elizabeth among the witches, but wasn't hurt by her until May 13th, when the real Elizabeth visited Anne's home to try to clear things up and told Anne what her name was. And John Kimball testified against Susannah Martin in 2 depositions. He said that about 23 years ago, which was when Susannah was first charged with witchcraft, he was getting ready to move from Newbury to Amesbury, where he had purchased land from George Martin, Susannah's husband. The deal was that John would pay George on a certain day in March. When the payment was due, George and Susannah Martin came to John's house to collect. And for payment, John offered their choice of 3 cows and other cattle, but he saved 2 cows for himself, which were the first 2 cows he and his wife ever owned.
According to John, George Martin was satisfied with the payment, but Susannah wanted one of the reserved cows. She said, you had been as good as you had sold the cow, for she will never do you any more good.
And John believed that this prediction came true. The next April following, he said, that very cow lay in the fair, dry yard with her head to her side, but stark dead. And when she was fleeced, no impediment did appear in her, for she was a stout, lusty cow.
John added that after the cow died, so did another, then an ox, and then more cattle.
All told, the damage to the Kimball properties was 30 pounds that spring.
And John Kimball wasn't done. He submitted another deposition against Susannah Martin. Like his first deposition, this was recorded by Magistrate Robert Pike of Salisbury.
Now John deposed that the year he moved to Amesbury, he was living in the house of Edmund Elliot, who asked him to get a dog, and John had heard that Susannah Martin had puppies to sell.
Susannah did not give John his choice of a pup, so he said that he heard one Blaisdell had a dog that might have a litter.
So John left Susannah's and went to Blaisdell's, where he did choose a puppy.
Just then, George Martin was passing by. He stopped and asked John whether he would have one of Susannah's puppies. John told him, no.
That very day, Edmund Elliot said that he was at the house of the said Martins and heard George Martin ask his wife why this John Kimball were not to have one of her puppies, and she said he was. Then said he have got one at Goodman Blaisdell's, and he saw him choose it and mark it, to which his wife said, if I live, I'll give him puppies enough. A few days later, John visited the land he had purchased and was coming back to Edmund Elliot's house around sunset when a little black cloud arose in the northwest. A few drops of rain fell, and the wind blew pretty hard, as he described it. Between the house of John Wee and the meeting house, John Kimball came by the stumps of several trees. For reasons he couldn't understand, he stumbled over the stumps one after another, though he had his axe on his shoulder, which put him in danger and made him resolve to avoid the next, but he never could. He testified, quote, and when he came a little below the meeting house, there did appear a little thing like a puppy of darkish color. It shot between my legs forward and backward as one that were dancing the hay. And this deponent, being free from all fear, used all possible endeavors to cut the puppy with his axe, and could not hurt it. And as he was this laboring with his axe, the puppy gave a little jump from him and seemed to go into the ground. John continued, in a little farther going, there did appear a black puppy somewhat bigger than the first, but as black as a coal to his apprehension, which came against him with such violence as its quick motions did exceed his motions of his axe. Do what he could, and it flew at his belly and away, and then at his throat and over his shoulder, one way and go off and up at it again another way, and with such quickness, speed, and violence did it assault him, as if it would tear out his throat or his belly. A good while he was without fear, but at last I felt my heart to fail and sink under it, that I thought my life was going out, and I recovered myself and gave a start up and ran to the fence, and calling upon God and naming the name of Jesus Christ, and then it invisibly away. My meaning is it ceased at once, but this deponent made it not known to anybody for frightening his wife. The next day, Edmund Elliot went toward the Martin home on his way to see his oxen. Susannah Martin asked him where John Kimball was, and he told her he was in bed with his wife for all he knew. Then she said, they say he was frightened last night.
Edmund asked, with what? Susannah said, with puppies. Edmund replied that he hadn't heard anything about it and asked her where she heard it. Susannah said she heard it said about the town.